hope.
Vanderkam. I'm a mother of 5, an author, journalist, and speaker.
Sarah Hart Unger. I'm on the side. We are tutors and our families.
Worlds. Here we talk about fun. From figures, we want you to get the... Welcome to Best of Both Worlds. This is episode 200 in mid-July of 2020. Is going to be interviewing Alyce Thompson, career parents. When our blog reader, our guests as well, there is to share how people are managing their lives and managing to make work and life fit together. So lots of great advice from Alyce coming up in this one. But both of us, as Sarah and I are recording this in late June, are navigating some unexpected challenges.
Not to skip ahead, but we were things, and really like and gratitude for me has always feel tempted to freak out about some plan, not anything all that terrible.
Wrong though is
thing is my husband's car, like every single, which is an old car, every single, I was supposed to take Genevieve, I don't have, he's going to get it fixed, whatever it is. And it's just, as it is to get that phone call, it'd be like, okay, well, that's actually a great phone call compared to the car accident that could have just happened. Or, I don't know, a million other things that are worse. Things like Uber exist, and there are ways around this kind of a problem. I think my way out of the funk when it's full.
Yeah. Well, we're dealing with unexpected some childcare issues that people we would normally be having care for our kids here. And so various backup things, some number of days of emergency childcare through his, it turns out you have to go through this whole registration process. It's only days that you can go to. There's always a gap between we'll be able to make it happen. If we shall see. We're also, talking to fitters and such. But, and again, it's all fine for missing work. He won't be at work. But the reasons you wanted to talk with good about managing, just talk a little bit about that.
Advantages are far little things that we just, and so I get a sense of how the ability, to sin even difficult things. She has a special needs child and there's been a really long that she's going to talk about, and really enjoy it as well.
Let's hear from Alyce.
Excited to welcome Alyce Thompson. I feel like but she is up to seeing what she has to say. For coming on, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell our listeners what you do?
Sure. I am a attorney for the federal government, job more or less. Well, I've worked in my same office law school 9 years ago. I became almost now, and also has a child. She turned 3 in March, and she is very, very, very active. And has never met she's a rare called Dravet Syndrome. It is a form of medication, general medications. Her seizures are really just sort of the tip of the iceberg. It also comes with intellectual disabilities and some physical disabilities. And even though my she's probably on the mild, she is very unlikely to ever be self-supportive independently at this point. You never know. That's, more or less and things like that.
On your plate and positivity, a lot that might look like as her diagnosis or that change your experience with an intense job.
So I will say personally was very open-minded to what my child was going to be like. I have 7 siblings and we're all completely and totally different. So I went into parenting thinking it was a total wild card. You had no idea what you were going to get. I also fully expected that my kid was going to have health issues. In my head, I thought it was definitely not expecting. My daughter had 5 months old, and I was like, going on, I should go home and things like that. And then they sent me a very first seizure. My husband was he was able to drive over. He got there. So, the beginning was very on. And I think in large part because you're trying to learn what's going on. You're also trying to reconcile your expectation with your reality. And, in the sense that percent of kids with Dravet, for various reasons, but it does change your perspective. But, reading to my daughter for her bed as part of her bedtime routine most of the time. And it is something that I find very joyful because it's something we both thoroughly enjoy doing, give or take the book selection, of course. But it is, I don't know, and so very aware in the moment, not sort of wish time away. So I think that's been really a nice part of my.
I get from you now that you are very, intentional with the time that you spend with her and the focus on her, and that perspective is incredibly valuable. Time it is when you're dealing with a child that has different medical needs. Written a little bit about that. How have you gone right kind of support now?
Before I did, and was really longer, we had a lot of the mental labor around the responsibility parent who has to take on. And so, I did not agree to have a kid until he agreed that he would do more than 51% of the work. And, my husband is entirely, and our arrangement has actually kind of shifted to the majority of the sort of like day-to-day tasks that go into her care and feeding. One other thing that I negotiated was we going to be the person who changed diapers. And that's just reality. Wait till my husband gets home. But he has probably changed diapers, not yet potty trained at 3. So he's still working at it. And I am everything by myself. I think one of the lessons I have learned that my daughter has a huge multiple nutritionist. We've gone to her pediatrician is amazing. We actually have Kaiser medical provider, and and everything is coordinated, which has made a huge difference in terms of the administration. Is rare, so they actually sit inside of the Kaiser system. And I have thought, I can negate their child's, and their care is such an administrative burden. I will sing Kaiser because of how easy they for us to see and also know that they kind of funk my doctor. And one of the things that he pulled early in her diagnosis it was from a website which has an overview of her entire syndrome and the sort of what is the standard sort of tests, what are the standard supports, what are sort of medications.
That is, I have to say that is, I know because I've seen it depending on what we have some complex people are purposely obstructed. I can see exactly what you said. Be like, well, I guess I have to regard. It gives me hope, and it makes me think
yeah, no, our health insurance has been amazing. And the thing that I find, it's actually in terms of plans that are available to at least federal employees, it's actually the cheapest option, which is the level of has provided us astounding.
Care is truly coordinated. Often at the end of helps the patients, but labor, extra red tape. And I'm just so glad. And we will be right back because you have had a good experience in that regard, which is wonderful, but also the other side can look. I am curious because I am so impressed that you guys were able to intentionally, really demanding jobs from the title of your jobs. Are there employed along the way, other than medical specialists, of course, to help? Or does your daughter's unique condition make that a lot more difficult because that level of expertise to understand?
Yes, we have. Our seizures are actually fair. So she's at a daycare that we picked out that had, before we ever knew the place that she's been at for this, just at the same time that we were. And it was easy to help them to had licensing
safety guidelines, or
they had to have training on it. We actually recently had gone to seizure this, and so they've always done a wonderful care. I actually think the bigger challenge as she aids the sort of intellectual deficit, seizures providers know how to, some of the other 2 years has resulted in sort of behavioral challenges not kick her out. We need to think about transitioning her to a traditional preschool because it's time to be thinking about that. They were very being patient with us as we would be challenging. They were pushing her towards the door. And that was really, really stressful to feel like, the systems we had in place needed to change. And fundamentally what I see in those scenarios, and also the arc of where it is a school that's open to the public, daycare, preschool, our local high school actually serves both the children and also any children of students, if students have kids. They partner with the ARC who pays for a nurse site, which we feel because of that combination, they're used to having sort of medically fragile kids with high medical needs, delays, and so liar there, even though normal kids, neurotypical, no health problem, capable of super needs. Simone is now at a stage where her seizures are controlled with her daily medications, and she's on a rescue medication that prepared for that. And whoever was watching her had to be prepared for that. And so that was really tough. We have not, we have only left Simone alone with a babysitter. And we have found babysitters there are a lot of schools near us. So college students who are interested in working with kids with special needs have actually been our best options. And we have also had this away. And so they actually come regularly and watch our babysitter. For the most part, we don't leave people come over and watch her while we're still home, but we still get when she was in their hands-on with her. And we could then get in a way that sort of primary support our pandemic job and take our daughter to her therapy appointments, another huge thing. To get more therapy but like I said, there's a huge team of people and kinds of therapy appointments. Her daycare is always thing we did during the pandemic was which is actually
talking about give yourself a break. Your marriage and being able to, since I totally be in your house, but then have a caregiver so that you could do you ever take are you able to, I don't know, the babysitter in another area or how do you work or even just alone time?
There are a couple things we've done. First of all, we have actually been able to take a couple of it and it worked out great. And we were we took was for our anniversary this work. And our in-laws came and stayed at our house with our daughter with everything. And she was going away. So they also got less of a burden on them. And so they were doing more like the morning routine, the evening routine. They still had their days free. My father-in-law is still working and he was going into the office like normal. And during the day, my mother-in-law at our house, and next to do. And so that was one thing that worked really pandemic. And it's because we're seeing each other a lot and interacting going on walks during the day. Couples therapy and the best possible thing. And these is a roller coaster. Many things to adjust terms with. And I can say that we are super terrible to say this, but the pandemic is so much harder. Her first birthday, more or less, the pandemic and everything shutting down and daycare being closed. It was her first birthday for us in terms of any services yet. So she was still small enough that she was you could sit her. And so he wasn't in court, took the lead in parenting her, super for the pandemic, my favorite things, but we definitely created that we had to get implement to. And so it was a very demanding time. And I've totally lost track of what I was saying. I don't even remember
I don't know if I do either, but it was super interesting. No, the time is truly like a pandemic in my head that thankfully stick stuff because that could have gotten right. Yeah. The timing worked out midweek it's so much less for a babysitter to come. And you and I are lucky enough to have paid time off built in. So
patients are very busy, lots of energy, things they want to. And, as new administration, we were like, okay, so we know that this is going to be how are we building in and planning in reduce on the front end, knowing that it's going to be doing things like my boss, she is not that much older than me, but she doesn't have vacations. So she is out her very long vacations for the next 2 years. Already on the calendar, I know to plan around them. I am much less in that stage of life where I want to travel with my kiddo, and it's already on the calendar. I use it as a work catch-up to the office, and I'm actually to the wayside to myself in a way that's rejuvenating in the same way. And, I mentioned that, my husband and I, we divide up and I'm responsible for all of the inventory that comes. I am responsible for the bungalow that needs all related stuff. And sometimes, and so I just plan it in my calendar. A lot of, managing her care and managing work involves advanced planning. And it's knowing things like, oh, I need to schedule the calendar open so that I can get the 8:30 a.m. appointment. Our pediatrician in the area and pediatrician and it works out anyways. And sort of things that are couples appointment of the day in a morning. It is The one thing I'll say about couple date night is that my husband really hates going out to dinner. That's not his idea of a fun activity. I said earlier, this is an emotional roller coaster, but the thing that is really surprising is that my husband to the experience than I am to the same things in this and couples therapy to each other about what way that like we time to sort of reconnect and even really great place. I come to couples therapy once a month, every month for like the rest. It's a great time with my partner in a that like we don't always proactive about thoughts with one another and
something, but it can be doing, or it can just like cathartic or almost pleasurable. I know exactly what you mean. I don't have the couples experience, but I've gone on my own. And sometimes it's just like nice to look forward to like my safe space to vent and say whatever is probably going to be. And with a couple, I can time. Like it needs to be
fun. And hemorrhaging money on there, we've been putting our money and where we were at in our abilities is like there are periods of crisis and then there's state of being. And I will say like the phase was very much like, I just think it's inherently a moment of figure out what's going on, what your new normal is. And in the first, maybe a year and a half, two, and that's with a very easy to diagnose issue on and really laid the path and like in the world of epilepsy. And it was, but still it took a long time to figure out at a time, really crisis phase your kid needs that actually work for the whole entire. It can be feeling overwhelmed as parents. We need to like not take you to your sixth therapy. It could be I need to switch health insurance. Are able to. I need to bosses not understand my life. I need to find either I need to find a new job or I need to within my organization. These bosses have the reputation of like being good bosses. You know, I was really lucky that I have a lot of bosses who understood when I said that phone immediately. I am never going to not answer a phone call from my child's daycare. And if my daycare tells me my child is having a seizure, over there immediately. And so like, you can have the meeting or not, but I'm leaving.
So glad that you do work with people who, because that is the most important thing. And it would, because there's got to be someone who is that and also under. So, wow. Well, I was going to ask the question, tell a younger Alyce who or was just starting out, somebody embarking on something.
That I haven't mentioned that I think was very helpful is like other organized groups, either ability or kids with disabilities that are both local or perhaps national. I think each of these different kinds of groups offer. So the group that's organizing XYZ other very specific thing, they're the people who most understand what we are because I feel like I am seeing, even if I have no idea what I'm experiencing. So that's not my fate. I also know they're the ones who get me. I generally sort of special needs makes me feel, but also physical in terms of like to like, oh, it's navigating an IEP process with the local or what schools are particularly good for kids with different types of disabilities, kinds of questions. And then groups do all kinds of really fascinating programming. I've been Courageous Parent Network helps supports high medical needs. I recently attended dealing with your kid, and they're providing that kind of the Dravet group me and recognize. And the other thing that I was good with very lonely because all your other friends are having normally and very lonely. And my experience has been of them and incredibly meaningful to tell people what you're going. That does a lot. It won't change the fact that they don't truly, they're not experiencing what you're experiencing. Feel like you have to leave your life behind. Feel like basically bring them along. That has actually made a tremendous difference to feel like some of what I'm experiencing.
Relationships in your life is because, as you said, you need to keep. Totally makes sense. Love of the week. I love the legit.
Yeah, my life is actually pretty working from home and not been getting enough sleep and everything is so much harder and everything is so much worse and things are calming down. So like my number one priority right now is sleep. The last 6 months, 40 hours a night, and I was like, oh, that's why between 6 and 7 though, most when I go to bed. And I can handle right now because of all of the stress of the last few years was more intense exercise was depleting. So at this stage is in the morning, call on my walks, other friends with kids, walk their dogs in the morning and something. Then come home and all that sort of thing. And is getting my daughter up. He usually prepares her food the night before. And she usually eats for the first time at daycare. Weather is not or too hot. because it's actually heat to daycare, but you're cool enough that he can bike her in. And then I sit down and it usually continues. Usually have my first meal around like 11. And then I have my second meal of the day. Our daughter actually recently tries keto diet and is not at the stage where you can eat because if it goes to bed, it's too late for that. And then, so I'm more likely there, although oftentimes in best case scenario, at a playground on the way home where she gets to run around and get out a lot of extra energy. And she is usually, she has an ice vest that she wears. So my husband will go with water in an insulated container. Notice.
It's like you're like, okay.
Like she's not going to cool, or like she needs to be cool measured by the grams, like 92% eating like variations of.
And for those who are listening, this is a fairly like well-known protocol for severe seizures. So there may be others who have experienced this as well. And it has to be medically supervised and everything.
This is why she has two neurologists. She has, and then her neurologist, her sort of keto protocol do that themselves. And she loves her keto. It was actually going to be really hard because everyone's like difficult to do, but she literally eats every herb. But she had before starting keto, intuitively knows that she needs it. Well, we've seen massive development takes, like 15 minutes now. And it's like the portions of food are very small. And so she eats in like 10 minutes, maybe a little longer if she's working on learning how to spoon feed herself. And use utensils. And so that takes a little like play and putter. And then my husband gets to do story time. And we just sit. I just like grab. Usually we'll read an hour, but I'll sit there and I'll say, "Well, are you?" And she's like, "No." And she'll like, "No." This back and forth. And it's one of my favorite rituals of, and then eventually she'll be like, "Ready?" And so then I like the sound of a heartbeat and please, she'll give the doll a squeeze. And then I'll tuck her into bed and I'll say, we're just outside the door. If anything comes up, we're not doing very like relatively increases the likelihood of seizure. Like stick around our house, air conditioning, it really limits. That is remotely nice weather, but it's summertime, not great.
Sounds very cozy and lovely and peaceful, thoughtful routine around everything. So all right, love. I'm excited to hear you.
So I mentioned that we have, and we are probably going to be doing, and projects that I largely make the majority of the decision, do all the coordination, and it is a tremendous amount of work. And I was talking about this with my therapist the other day, and I was like, I can't believe we're finally getting to a place of relative calm. And I'm like entertaining the idea of introducing this like crazy wild card. Just had the epiphany the other day. I'm going to treat this like it's meant to have a timeline. I love houses and things like that. And so one of the things that I found recently actually was called advice from area who has this podcast of like that, and stressing me out about the project was just an architect. What do you need to know?
That's awesome. I'm so into renovation. Thankfully, I don't think our current house will need too much because it's only 30 years old and we already put in floors and that's the extent of what I can handle. That is awesome. I just finished on Mandel's Sea of God. I loved it, loved it, loved it. And not everybody loved Glass Hotel. It takes pieces of the wild and I thought it was fantastic.
Cool.
All right. Well, Alyce, I may actually have to convince you to also find this incredibly valuable. Awesome.
Alyce. This is, running a lab that has many scientists working for her. And she has been recently given $2,000 to spend on. So the fun things, and she was asking she should spend it. Things out there, $2,000 on is fun sitting around for.
I mean, I'll mention one of her, and even though I think that is like, there's also a lot of money. So do those. I'm not talking about buying the clothes. That might be something you own. If I had $2,000, and she clarifies that this is like in addition to other kind of leadership and management training and regular conferences, I would probably conference where, and they do in the medical world, physicians empowerment type, spend it on something like that. A retreat for myself, a concrete skill set that I wanted, some kind of like planning type training or management workshop, run by one of the bigger companies. And I think that could be really, really cool as well. I just think the styling question of her question is going to be a hard sell for most.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
A couple of things, one is like always wanted to read, and I guess they would focused on science. It could be just self-help development, perfect through the whole $2,000 on the coaching as well. I think Some people who are very good, quit their job and then now want to tell other people how to do that job that they that's, you got to be careful of investing in that overall general. And something that would be a little bit, your industry's big company going to that. What if you had $2,000? So let us know. And in the meantime, this episode, Sarah has been interviewing Alyce Thompson. We will be back next week with more on making work and life fit together.
Thanks for listening. You can find me, Sarah, at the Scores Shoebox on Instagram.
Me, Laura, at lauravanderkam.com. Been the Best of Both Worlds podcast. Please for more on making work and life work together.